There is only one presence and one power active within me and throughout the universe. God the good, omnipotent.
Hello, and welcome to our podcast. This is Unity Church of Chatsworth. Our spiritual leader, Reverend John Washington, and I am Michelle Washington, RN, pastoral nurse.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord. Paraphrasing from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 41. Watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
From the Revealing Word by Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity. The metaphysical meaning of prayer. Prayer, communion between God and a person. This communion takes place in the innermost part of a person's being. It is the only way to cleanse and perfect the consciousness and thus permanently heal the body. All through the scriptures, the different attitudes of mind necessary in prayer are pointed out. We are told to be instant in prayer, to pray with the Spirit, to pray in understanding. We have thought that prayer was something we could go to in any way at any time, but we have learned that to get results, we must pray with persistence and understanding and with faith. The temporary Sunday school teacher was struggling to open the combination lock on the supply cabinet. She had been given the combination, but she just couldn't quite remember it. Finally, she went to the pastor's study and asked for help. The pastor came into the room and began to turn the dial. After the first two numbers, he paused and stared blankly ahead for a moment. Finally, he looked serenely heavenward, and his lips moved silently. Then he looked back at the lock and quickly turned to the final number, and he opened the lock. The teacher was amazed. "I'm in awe at your faith, Pastor," she said. "It's really nothing," he answered. "The number is on a piece of tape on the ceiling."
These questions that we're asking ourselves today as we are thinking about today's lesson title, Watch and Pray. And Michelle, I'm recalling when I was 5, 6, or 7, or a little older.
Okay.
And I can remember my mother and my father. In particular, it was my mother who would say from time to time, depending on what was going on in the neighborhood or in the community, in the city or town, do you know it's time, John and the rest of you children, to come now, sit on the porch, and watch and pray. Do you have a similar memory, Michelle?
Well, we've talked about that before, where
Yes.
when the sun started to go down and the street lights came on, and my mother would come out and call me. And my grandfather, I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. My grandfather was on the front porch quite a bit. He hung out there during the warmer months, and she would always say, "Come sit by your grandfather and be quiet."
Yes.
And be quiet.
It is not I, but the Christ within who does the work.
thank you for listening to our podcast. Have a blessed week.